Hi guys, John from LookSmart Home Inspections right here in New Jersey. And I want to kind of run you through the process that I use to inspect a kitchen. So kitchens are super important in homes. In fact, some clients just buy the house because of the kitchen. It's one of the main selling points of the house is to have a beautiful, nice, workable kitchen. And it's really important that buyers have a good inspection of the kitchen. I'm just going to kind of share my process in inspecting a kitchen. It's probably not going to include everything. I'm just kind of going stream of consciousness here. And just to give you an overview of what a home inspector in New Jersey will look at, in your kitchen. I like to start in the kitchen in the sink area. And I like to obviously start with the hot and the cold water flow. So I'll run both hot and cold water, and I'll make sure that there's what we call a good functional water flow at the kitchen sink. So we don't want to see poor water flow or low pressure at the kitchen sink, because the kitchen sink needs good water pressure because we're going to be washing, pots and pans, utensils, things like that at the sink, and we need a decent water pressure there. So the first thing I'm going to look at is the water pressure at the kitchen sink, both hot and the cold. Is that adequate or sufficient enough for my client to do, general washing duties at the kitchen sink? And the next thing I'm going to do is assess, is there enough hot water? So is our water temperature adequate? Is it too high? Is water temperature at the kitchen sink too hot, which sometimes it is, where somebody can get burned, or is it just not enough hot water at the kitchen sink? So that's the first assessment I will do. I'll inspect the kitchen sink area, the countertop area around, make sure there's no water damage or anything. We'll check that faucet for function, make sure the spray hose is operational if equipped. We'll also check any water filters. Sometimes there's a separate water filter or hot water dispenser in the kitchen sink area, and then we'll check that. The next thing we'll do is go under the kitchen sink. We'll open the cabinet doors and we'll do an inspection of the under the sink area. And we'll look and see, while running water, is there any leakage from the under this kitchen sink? Now, this is a kind of a hotbed area for leakage. There's many times I'll find an active leak under a kitchen sink, a dripping, where the owner of the house won't even know it exists. But that's something we're going to look at, both hot and cold side of the water. We're going to look in there, take our flashlight, and look for any leakage around the valves. Look above, around the top of the kitchen, the bottom of the kitchen sink, and just make sure there's no water leakage there. It's very, very important. We'll assess our valve condition too. The hot and the cold water valves. Are there corrosion on the valves? Is there leakage? Now, we're not, as home inspectors here in New Jersey, going to operate or test any valves in a home. And generally speaking, valves are generally a neglected area of a house. People don't really test and operate their under the sink valves or any valves in the home for that matter. So we're going to leave those valves alone. And if the valves are not looking good, we'll make a note that says, hey, you should upgrade these valves to something more reliable. A lot of these older kitchens have these older gate valves with a plastic stem. They're just not reliable. They're going to be calcified. You're not going to be able to turn them. And when you need them the most, they're going to fail. And if they fail, that's a big problem. So one of the things that I like to do is educate my client on the importance of good working cutoff valves in a home. And one of those that is important is under the kitchen sink, and also the valve that feeds water, hot water, to the dishwasher. Want to make sure these valves are in good condition. We'll then assess, do we have a garbage disposal unit? If there's a garbage disposal unit, we'll test and operate that. We're not going to put anything in the garbage disposal to grind, but we are going to test it for function. We're going to put it on. We're going to listen to see how it sounds. Is it grinding? Is it making a normal operational noise, or is it making a high-pitched whirring noise where a bearing could be going? Is it grinding? Is something stuck in it? We're also going to look at the electrical wiring connection from the electrical switch to the disposer and make sure that that wire is protected. A lot of these garbage disposals are installed by handymen and the homeowner, and we'll have electrical wiring just kind of hanging loose under the kitchen sink, which is not what we want. We want to make sure that our electrical wiring is adequately protected in a proper tubing. It's out of the way where somebody reaching for something under the kitchen sink just can't come in good contact, with that electrical wiring. So that's important. That's important as well. We're going to be looking for our dishwasher discharge pipe. So this is the tubing or the waistline from the dishwasher into our standpipe. We're going to making sure that that has the adequate loop upward and then down. We want a high loop from this line. Yes, it's true that many dishwashers have an internal loop, but we would like to see a high loop where the dishwasher line comes in, loops down, attaches to the underside of the sink rim, and then attaches inside, attaches with a proper clamp to the standpipe under the kitchen sink. And we do this because we don't want a backflow. We don't want a backflow of the sink into the dishwasher and kind of vice versa. So it's important to have that high loop configuration. We're also going to be looking for mold under the kitchen sink. We'll grab our flashlight. We're going to be looking for mold under the kitchen sink to make sure that there's no mold growth there. We're going to be using our nose to kind of smell. Is there anything weird? Is there a moldy, musty odor? Because this is a high area of leakage generally. And sometimes you'd be surprised, these leaks can go on for a long time. And we're going to be looking for our floor in our under the sink area. So on the floor cabinet, we're looking for any deformation of the floor. We're looking for any kind of delamination, come water staining, because this can indicate a past or present leak. So we just really want to keep our eyes peeled with doing our under the sink evaluation of the kitchen, which is an important part of the kitchen inspection. Next, I'm going to go to the dishwasher. I'm going to open the dishwasher door. I'm going to make sure that that dishwasher door doesn't come crashing down where somebody can actually get injured. The dishwasher door should open with a tension. It shouldn't just come crashing down. So we're going to inspect our dishwasher door hinges. We're going to pull out our racks, make sure that they function properly, that they operate smoothly back and forth. We're going to look inside the dishwasher for any damages, any scorching, anything going on. We're going to be looking for standing water at the bottom of the dishwasher also. Then we're going to run our dishwasher through a cycle, and just to make sure that it is operational. Now, we're not going to be doing dishes unless there's dishes inside the dishwasher. Sometimes owners of homes will have the dishwasher all set up where they're ready to run the dishwasher through a cycle. They'll have soap in it, whatever. Fine by me. I don't care. But in any event, I have to run that dishwasher. Sometimes dishwasher used as sort of like a storage area for plastic and dishes. And in that case, I don't really want to run it because that can be problematic. So if they're using it as storage, maybe they haven't run it in a long time, and a dishwasher needs to be operated on a regular basis just so the gaskets and O-rings don't dry out. You want to really make sure that the dishwasher is operated on a regular basis. So in that case, we'll just put in the report that, hey, I couldn't run the dishwasher because it's used, as a storage area. And then we'll have the seller, explain to the buyer if it's working, maybe demonstrate its operation on the walkthrough and what have not. Maybe the agent can get involved in that also with a future, testing of the dishwasher. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to move up into our kitchen counter area. And I'm going to make sure the kitchen counter is not stained, damaged, cracked, and that's in good condition. So any deficiencies in the kitchen counter area, I'm going to notate, whether that be, some cracking, some damage, some staining, poor sealing of where the backsplash, meets the kitchen counter. I'm going to test and operate any windows in the kitchen area. Now, generally, there's a window above the kitchen sink. And this is an important window because you're standing at the kitchen sink. It's the springtime, it's the early summer. You want to open that window, get some fresh air. So we want to make sure that kitchen sink window is in good condition for operation. Does it open? Does it close? Is there a broken seal? Give an assessment of that kitchen window. The next thing I'm going to do is probably move along to the electrical receptacles in the kitchen. So we want to see GFCI protected electrical receptacles in the kitchen. So ground fault circuit interrupters. And we want to make sure that each of the kitchen counter receptacles are GFCI protected. Now, it's true in older kitchens, not every one is going to be protected, most likely. It's a good recommendation. In newer kitchens, definitely we want to see this kind of protection. But we want to see an adequate number of electrical receptacles in the kitchen where if our buyer runs some equipment, he or she doesn't have to run any extension cords. We want, an adequate number of kitchen counter electrical receptacles. And we're not looking for code here. We're not code inspectors as home inspectors. We are looking for common sense things. We're looking for safety issues. And we just want to make sure that the electrical receptacles in the kitchen counter area are functional, they're grounded, they're GFCI protected. Now, we won't probably see, in many kitchens, they only have one or two GFCI electrical receptacles, but those receptacles can also be protecting the electrical receptacles downstream of those electrical receptacles. You guys may call them outlets. In New Jersey here, the home inspectors, we call these things receptacles. I know it's kind of a funny name. I used to call them, before I became a home inspector, I used to call them outlets myself, but they are in fact receptacles. So we'll test those. We'll use our GFCI tester, and we'll make sure that each of those test properly. So it should trip under load when a New Jersey home inspector tests those electrical outlets. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. If there is deficiencies there, we're certainly going to make a note of it because it is a safety hazard. So we want to make sure that our outlets are, in good working order, that everything is working, and for the most part, GFCI protected. If we have an island or a peninsula, we want to make sure that those electrical outlets are also protected. That's super important as well. Now, a kitchen should have at least two 20-amp circuits for the counter area. If possible, and we have labeling in the panel box, we're going to make sure of that. We're going to make sure that our refrigerator should be on a separate circuit, our built-in microwave generally on a separate circuit, our garbage disposal and dishwasher on a separate circuit. So a modern kitchen can have 6 or more electrical circuits, where an older kitchen may have 2 to 3. But if it's a modern kitchen, recently updated, we just want to make sure that, nothing is really tied together. We don't want our refrigerator tied together with the same circuit as the dishwasher per se, right? Because then we're asking for trouble. That circuit's going to trip. It's a lot of demand on that one circuit. So we want to see these separate. And as home inspectors here in New Jersey, we do our best for this. We're not allowed to trip breakers. We're not allowed to do that kind of do that kind of thing. But if the panel is labeled, I'll go in there, I'll actually look and see, this one's this for the dishwasher, separate breaker. This one's for the refrigerator, separate breaker, and dishwasher, garbage disposal, and so on. So just so it makes sense. We just want to make it, make sense. And if there's deficiencies there, certainly we will, report on that for sure. The next thing I do is go over to the range. Sometimes we have a built-in range, and sometimes we have a oven range combination. We want to light all the burners to make sure that the burners work. So we want to see good action in these burners. We want to make sure that they work, that the flame is uniform, that we don't have sort of what I call the campfire flame coming out, where it was just this kind of a big flame that's very orange or yellow, or orange in color. And we don't want that. We want a nice blue circular flame that's going to really be safe. And then we want to look at that for sure. We're going to run our oven and make sure it operates. We're going to run our broiler, if equipped, make sure it's operational. So these things, very important too. We're going to look at our gas line from the oven to make sure that there's a cutoff valve located under the range, or under the cabinet if it's built in. Usually you can just open a cabinet. You'll see your appliance connector coming in. We'll check the condition of that appliance connector. We don't really want to see any more brass, older appliance connectors because they're prone to leakage. We want to see a nice, new, short as possible appliance connector with a cutoff valve. So we'll be looking, cutoff on there. We'll be looking for that as well. The next thing I'll do is I'll turn my attention to the ventilation system in the kitchen. Now, sometimes, buyers love kitchen vents that discharge to the exterior of the home, and so do I. This is what you want to have. But many homes just recirculate. So they'll have sort of a microwave oven vent combo that's going to discharge right back into kitchen. Sometimes we see a separate kitchen exhaust vent that is just going to recirculate back into the kitchen. This is less desirable, although it's not a defect, but less desirable because these things are just basically noisemakers. They're not going to do a whole lot. Do they catch a little bit of grease? Yes. Do they discharge the steam and moisture, which is what we want, to the exterior? No, they do not. So we'll be looking for that as home inspectors. I definitely pay attention to that because my clients generally want to know, is my range hood or microwave vent going to the outside, or is it just recirculating? Very, very important. And then we're going to look at the discharge point on the outside, and we're going to make sure that that louver system or gooseneck is working correctly. We want to make sure that we actually see that opening up. Sometimes they're obstructed, sometimes they don't open properly. You have to look at that and make sure that it's actually discharging properly to the outside. If it's going up through an unfinished attic, sometimes we'll see a discharge at the roof. We want to make sure that that line is properly insulated so we don't get any condensation rollback. So that line should be insulated if it's going through an unconditioned space, like an attic. If it's going through a conditioned space, generally we don't have to have it insulated. But we look at this too. We want to make sure. We want to make sure it doesn't terminate in the attic space. Often these vents will terminate right in the attic space and then discharge their moisture in the attic, and that can create conditions that are conducive to mold growth in the attic because we're taking our moisture from the kitchen and just dumping it right into the attic, which is not what we want. So it's difficult sometimes to find the vent locations, but we do our best to do that. I do my best to do that because it's important just to make sure that these vents are working. Even if you have a vent to the outside, I do want to kind of use a paper towel test just to put that paper towel or tissue underneath that vent fan to see if there's a good draw on it, because sometimes these things will make a lot of noise and there'll just be very little draw where it won't even hold that paper towel or that tissue to the underside, where it's actually drawing that air from where into the filters. So I like to see that too. It's kind of not in the home inspection standards, but why not? I'm there. I like to give my client as much information as I can, right? So we'll assess that. I will also operate the microwave if it's built in. So the way I do this is I generally can find a sponge in the kitchen sink area or wet a paper towel. We'll put that in the microwave and we'll make sure that that gets heated, because you don't want your client to come in the house when they close and then the microwave not working. It's a simple test, just a basic test to see functionality of the microwave oven. And then we'll make sure that there's generally a night light or a light under the microwave. We'll just make sure that that works as well. So we'll do a full assessment of the microwave, including making sure that the microwave is nice and secure in its opening. We never want to see that, loose in there where that can be a safety hazard. We want to push on that thing and make sure that it's actually pretty tight and it's safe for our client. A lot of times you'll see microwaves with cracked doors and damaged doors because people slam them and they put a lot of abuse on there. It's only plastic. So we'll write that up. And if we see damage to the microwave front or the control unit, we'll just recommend replacement. They're not very expensive, and by the time you get parts and try to replace the thing and you're dealing with microwave energy leaking, you just want to just simply replace it is probably the best the best advice. Any wall ovens that are there, I'm going to test also, make sure that they work all on the broiler function and on the bake function. If they're convection we'll generally test that too. We'll make sure that that wall oven is nice and secure in its cabinet opening, that its doors are opening and closing properly, that we don't have any hinge problems, and that we don't have any safety issues there. So the next thing we'll do is move on to our refrigerator. Generally, our refrigerator stays with the contract or stays with the sale. We'll open our refrigerator, we'll check the inside, look for any damages, make sure that it is cold, obviously. Do the same thing with the freezer. If it's, make sure the freezer is working, make sure the food in there is frozen. We'll see if there's any water filters inside the refrigerator. If your refrigerator is equipped with an ice maker and water filter, I like to test those. I don't know what other home inspectors in New Jersey do, but it's people like these things. I'm there. Why not test it? So I'll see if I can borrow a glass or a paper towel. I'll put it under. I'll check the ice maker and the water filter, water dispenser for operation. I'll remind my client that this refrigerator also has a built-in filter that will also need periodic replacement. So the having a dispenser, a water dispenser, and a water line behind the refrigerator is both a blessing and a curse. These things are very vulnerable to leakage, and so many insurance claims come up because of this kind of thing where that line is always under pressure. And if it were to break or the valve were to fail, you know, that would be somewhat problematic. That could put a lot of damage under a kitchen floor. And I've seen, you know, lots and lots of damage caused by the water line behind the refrigerator. We want to check and make sure how that water line is being filled. We don't really want to see a saddle valve or a needle valve, which is a cheap, inexpensive way to make that water supply connection. These valves are prone to failure and leakage, and I call them out when I see them. I don't know if other home inspectors do that, but I don't like to see them. It's not a crisis, but I do let my client know that, hey, this valve right here is prone to issues, and you should upgrade this valve. So a lot of times we'll see saddle valves to dishwasher, not to dishwasher, but to the refrigerator, ice maker, and water dispenser. The other place where we'll see saddle valves is feeding a humidifier in the basement for the furnace, but that's not what we're talking about right now. So after the refrigerator, I'll move on to any other appliances that are there. If we have a wine chiller, we did the garbage disposal already. We don't test anything that's, you know, like built-in coffee machines or things like that. That's not really the scope or purview of a home inspector here in New Jersey. If the seller is there and he or she wants to demonstrate that that's working, we'll do that, but we're certainly not going to fire up the built-in espresso machine and make a cup of coffee to see if that's working. That's outside the scope of what we do in a normal, you know, appliance inspection for sure. Then I'm going to kind of take a little bit of a view of the kitchen in total. I'm going to look at the walls and the ceiling to make sure that there's no issues, cracking, displacement, anything that sort of would give me, you know, pause. We'll be side lighting the walls and the ceiling just to make sure that we don't see any deficiencies as far as sort of water staining in the kitchen ceiling. A lot of times there'll be a water source above the kitchen. There'll be a bathroom, stuff like that. And we want to make sure that there's no water staining above there. And then we'll be looking at our kitchen floor. We'll be making, generally a kitchen floor is tile, and usually we have a few cracked tiles, 1-2 tiles. We'll put that in the report. We'll just check for overall continuity of the floor, making sure that that is in good condition if possible. And if there's a couple of area rugs or some plastic mats, I generally try to lift them to make sure that there's no cracking or tile displacement under there. That's kind of an area where sometimes sellers will kind of conceal some broken tiles is under some mats in the kitchen. Always like to just, if possible, look under there just to make sure that there's nothing going on. I'm also going to open and close all the cabinetry in the kitchen. We're going to make sure the cabinet doors are safe, that the hinges are not loose, that everything opens and closes correctly. If the cabinetry has a soft closed feature, we're going to test that and report on any of those deficiencies. we're going to make sure that the cabinetry is adequately secured to the wall studs in the kitchen. Sometimes cabinetry is not sometimes, but most times the cabinetry is installed with improper fasteners, such as sheet metal screws or drywall screws, which not really designed for the sheer strength of the cabinetry. We want to see good cabinetry screws, which look a lot different than those. So we're making sure that there's an appropriate number, that the cabinetry is secure. We're going to give it a little bit of a tug, nothing crazy. Just make sure that cabinetry doesn't move. And then we're going to eye up behind the cabinetry if possible and make sure that cabinetry is not pulling off the wall. Sometimes you'll eye it up and you'll actually see a space between the back of the cabinetry and the wall, indicating that the cabinetry is pulling loose, and that could be, definitely a safety issue there. So cabinetry inspection is also very important. If there's any doors in the kitchen, such as a sliding door off the kitchen, we're going to test and operate that, look for a screen, make sure that nothing's binding, that the door is easily functional, that it locks. If there's a man door, we're certainly going to look at that too, make sure that that door's function, look for any air gaps, check the locking mechanism, make sure that that works. Does the door open and close smoothly? Because we want to make sure that the doors of the house open and close smoothly so the occupants can escape quickly in the event of an emergency. So also in the kitchen, if there's any skylights, we're going to be looking for skylight water penetration around there, any broken seals in the skylights also. We'll be looking for the lighting in the kitchen, making sure that the lighting is operational. If there's hi-hat lights, if there's a ceiling fan, making sure that that all is operational, and looking for any kind of water staining around those hi-hat light fixtures. Very, very important. So we'll also be operating anything else in the kitchen, regarding specialty features, different things in the kitchen. If I know how to do it, I will do it. Like I said before, coffee makers and specialty things like that we don't do. And then what we'll do is we'll check for heating registers also. So we want to make sure that our kitchen has a source of heating, whether that be an electric toe kick heater, baseboard radiator, radiant floor heating, that we have both a heating register or some means to heat the kitchen. We want our kitchen comfortable because that is an area where the family is going to usually congregate, and that's where people generally collect in the kitchen, and you spend a lot of time in a kitchen. So that's why I myself, and I'm sure other home inspectors here in New Jersey, we spend a lot of time checking the kitchen and doing a thorough kitchen inspection, because it's really important for our buyer. Now, that's not everything. I'm sure I missed one or two items that we'll definitely look for in a kitchen. That's sort of a stream of consciousness, sort of how I would approach the kitchen inspection. And we don't rush this. We want to make sure that we take our time and check everything in a kitchen. It's super, super important. So thank you guys for hanging in there. If I can answer any of your questions, my name is John from LookSmart Home Inspections, and I do home inspections throughout the state of New Jersey. And reach out if you have any questions. And thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.